Good evening and welcome to the December 8th, 2021 meeting of the East Lansing Planning Commission. Mr. Menzer, would you please call roll?
I will, thank you. Commissioner Cahill.
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
Commissioner Lapine.
Here.
Commissioner Wagner.
Here.
Commissioner Bowman.
Here.
Commissioner Hendricks. So that's it.
Yep. Are we good?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. We do have a quorum. Moving on to item 1.2, the approval of this evening's agenda. You all have an agenda that was included in your packet. I'd entertain a motion to approve that agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Williams and seconded by Commissioner Wolf to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll have a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries. I see that we have approval of the minutes on the agenda, but I don't recall, in fact, I know I didn't receive any in our packet, and so I presume we'll see that next month. Was there? It wasn't in my packet.
They are there now.
All right, well, I will have to recuse myself from this particular vote, but I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. My apologies, Ms. Zerdalis. I'll have to go back and check.
Wolf, so moved. Move approval. Second.
It's not in the, thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Wolf and seconded by Commissioner Wagner to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion on that motion? And then we'll have a vote on that. On all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That motion carries as well. Again, apologies, it's not in my packet right now. I must have downloaded an earlier version. Moving us on to committee reports, we have none, and then on to staff reports. I see we have a new format. Mr. Menzer?
Yes, good evening. So I'd like to go over a couple things very briefly with you. Let me just pull this up. So project updates, I just wanted to tell you the council met last week and they did set the public hearing for the property at 218 and 224 West Lake Lansing Road. That's the proposed rezoning from RA to B5. That'll be at the Planning Commission's first meeting in January, the January 12 meeting. And if you'll remember, there was another rezoning property adjacent to that that would be along with that that's been tabled currently. And once the public hearing has been completed for the properties at 218 and 224, at the following meeting in January, those would then proceed essentially hand in hand, separate, but along the same path from there. Want to just announce that meetings for the foreseeable future will be held here in the Hanna Center. So until we're told otherwise, plan on attending meetings here at the Hanna Center. This is the last Planning Commission meeting of the year. The first meeting is Wednesday, January 12, 2022. A brief update on form-based code, the Shaping the Avenue form-based code initiative, planning on transmitting the document along with a letter from the Shaping the Avenue committee for the City Council's December 21 meeting, and that is their last meeting of the year. Brief update on 2040 Merritt Road. That's a project that has been around the city for a while. There was recently a letter agreement approved by City Council that would allow the project to proceed. So the applicant is working on submittal of a building permit for the provisioning center, which would be phase 1. The letter agreement, for those that may not have seen it, outlined the phasing plan to move forward. So phase 1 would be the provisioning center. Phase 2 would be the shopping center, the multi-tenant shopping center with a drive-through window. And phase 3 would be the hotel. So that project would move ahead essentially as proposed with some clarification on phasing. And I just wanted to announce some upcoming likely applications or special use permits for 2 of the medical marijuana facilities that are here in the community at 1415 East Michigan and 2040 Merritt. Both of those have medical marijuana approval, but not the adult use. So I'm anticipating that they will come through for the adult use special use permit soon. And then another fraternity, much like the ones that are on the agenda tonight at 404 East Michigan. So that'll be to establish a fraternity at that property. And that's it for now.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Menzer? All right, and then how about item 3.3? I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add regarding the report about fraternities and sororities in East Lansing?
I just wanted to point out, I believe it started with a question from the audience, and had a couple questions from the planning commissioners. What I've provided here, just as an FYI, is a list that was kind of assembled from some information from MSU about the current fraternities and sororities in the city. What this provides, let me pull it up here, it's just the name of the fraternity, the address where they're currently located, whether or not they have a special use permit with the city. So you'll see there are few that do have a special use permit, and that is due to they've been established for decades in many cases. So we had no plans on requiring the special use permit retroactively, but those properties, whether they redevelop or possibly expand or relocate, will be required to get special use permit approval that would run through the Planning Commission and City Council, much like the current requests that are in your queue.
And any questions for Mr. Menzer regarding that report?
Can I just ask a question?
Absolutely.
About this? So I was looking at this. Thank you for this information. And I see there are 39 fraternities and 13 without houses, so roughly like a third. Are we going to just keep seeing, these are fraternities apply for houses until all 13 of them get houses? I mean, is there any way, no offense to the fraternities here in the room, and I appreciate everyone following the procedures, but I mean, I think it's too many, personally, but I see, we can't stop them from applying for a special use permit and following those rules. So is there anything more generally about the number of fraternities or sororities houses that we can have or should have in the city? It just seems...
That question's directed to me. I don't have any particular insight into this issue right now. Just really following city's policy of requiring the special use permit. I don't know the state of whether they're excess or a surplus or not enough Greek homes for Greek organizations here in the city.
I mean, this is just anecdotal, but my sense is that it's exactly that. The facilities aren't. There are no large, sort of surplus of large houses that might be able
That's
to
the only thing
accommodate.
stopping.
Yeah, exactly. But truly no idea. Any other, Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, so I think one point of distinction is that not all these fraternities are the same. Some of these are large 100-person organizations, and I think some of them are smaller and dedicated to like a particular college and the university. And then also, anecdotally, I had always heard that Michigan State had less fraternities than, say, other Big Ten schools. But, that's just anecdotal information. I have no, comparison that I could make or data on a website I could point to.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Menzer. That'll bring us on to item 4, Commissioner announcements. I have one brief announcement, and that we received a memo from Vice Chair Boyle this morning, and she's tending her resignation to the Planning Commission. So I wanted to take this opportunity on behalf of the Planning Commission and perhaps to thank Commissioner Boyle for her ongoing, continued, and long service to the city. She, as most of you know, she was appointed to the City Council in 2012 and then won election for a term the following year. But then after completion of her work on City Council, she continued to work on various boards and commissions throughout the city, including the past 5 years on the Planning Commission. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank our Vice Chair for her ongoing service, and I'll encourage all of you to reach out to her personally and thank her as well. Does anybody have are there any other announcements that any commissioners would like to make? All right, then. I'll note that Commissioner Hendricks is arriving at 7:10 before we move on to communications from citizens. This is the time in our meeting when we invite members of the public to come forward and make a comment on items that are on our agenda or perhaps items that are not on our agenda and you just wish to bring to our attention. We would generally ask that if it's an item that's open for our business, either as a public hearing, that you hold your comments until that time in the meeting when that comes up on our agenda. We do have one item of old business regarding a fraternity at 312 Harrison Road and 710 Oak Street. So if you'd like to make comments on that, now would be the time because the public hearing for that particular matter has already been held. or again, any other matter that you would like to bring to the attention of the Planning Commission, now would be the time to come forward. You see some movement over here? No? Okay, all right, we're good. Mr. Alice, if we have any remote attendees, please invite them to join us.
We have one remote attendee, Rebecca Ross. I'm going to unmute you and allow you to speak.
Hello, Alan Ross and Rebecca Ross are here.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
And we'll see you in about, well, we'll see you a little bit later in the meeting. Thank you. Then moving on, we'll proceed to our public hearing, our first public hearing of this evening. And this is item 6.1, the application to establish a fraternity at 251 West Grand River Avenue. Ms. Schmidt, excuse me.
Good evening. Forgot my name already, huh?
I wanted to call you Schweitzer.
The subject property is a little over half an acre in size. It has frontage on Grand River Avenue, Delta Street, and College Street. It's located in the B1 General Business Office District, which allows fraternities and sororities with an approved special use permit. The surrounding land uses are predominantly student-occupied rental houses. This includes one sorority just directly south of the proposed fraternity. The three-story, 3,000 square foot building was just constructed in 1989. The applicant is proposing to modify the interior of the building to house 44 fraternity members and a house mother. It's proposed to be the new chapter house for Sigma Pi fraternity. That has a total membership of 120 people. The site has 31 parking spaces behind the building. The approval for this project only requires 0.5 parking spaces per person, so they're only required to have 23. So they do have an excess of what is required. The property currently has bicycle parking for 10 bikes with an additional proposed bicycle parking for 13 more bikes. The total required storage for the proposed occupancy is 23 spaces. The trash enclosure is located just off College Street. The applicant has included a detail for a new trash enclosure that will be made large enough for recycling as well. This will be developed in a way that meets code. The basement includes an additional 1,033 square feet above the 3,000 feet of usable space. This is where all the events will be held. This property, or the basement, has two different stairways for entrance and exit. When they have social events, the fraternity is required to contact CRMC, the property owner, to discuss where extra parking will be located. Right now, their office is located at 234 Michigan Avenue, and it has 23 parking spaces that will likely be fully available on the nights that the fraternity would have events. So they anticipate having overflow parking there first. If they need excess, they will find other CRMC properties close by that can handle any additional parking. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from Ms. Schmidt? Commissioner Wolf?
Yeah, one of the things that kind of stands out in this application for me is the large increase in the occupancy. Right now, there are 10 bedrooms licensed for 20 occupants, and they're proposing 23 bedrooms and 45 occupants. It does look as though it doesn't exceed any of our requirements for the zone,
Right.
but it's still a little surprising. So my question is, do we know, or could we find out what the original occupancy was when this was first licensed as a fraternity in 1989?
Absolutely.
Was that similar to what they're requesting now, or?
Yes, it is. And just to remind you, the current use is there's two apartment units that each have 5 bedrooms, and each have a kitchen and each have a living room. So that's where you get some of the discrepancy with the number of people that would be allowed in the house, because the upper floors, 2 floors now, will be strictly bedrooms and bathrooms. So that's one big difference, but I'll get you the occupancy of 1989, and that'll clear things up.
Yeah, I did see that on the,
From 89?
It used to be licensed for 55.
Mr. Reeder said that it used to be had the occupancy for 55 in 1989.
that was when it was the fraternity.
Yes.
Yeah, I did see what you're talking about, the changes in the rooms. When you look
Right.
at the demolition and the new walls and so forth, you can see how they got the extra space. And the bedrooms are smaller by a bit. And-
Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from Ms. Schmidt?
Oh, okay.
I've got one. Just the, and that so there's allowance for a certain number of, I'll say, members, and then one house mother. Is that typical for a fraternity, a male fraternal organization, to have a house mother?
I don't know if it's typical. Some do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious, is it possible, and if so, is it acceptable that might be occupied by another, potentially 2 members? And it sounds to me like if it's less than the original occupancy, then it's probably not an issue.
Right. The house mother is included in the occupancy. Yes.
And that I realize that's probably a question for the applicant, but
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, or actually ask. I'd never heard of that. Typically, that would be in a
Sorority.
sorority, sure.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And I know that the applicant is here, so if you've got anything you might like to add to Ms. Schmidt's report, or if you'd be willing to take questions as well, we appreciate that.
Good evening. My name's Tom Reeder. I'm an architect with Bergman Associates. I have Wayne Heiner here as well, representing CRMC. I think between the two of us, we could probably answer any questions you have, but I think Darcy pretty much laid it out for us. It's like, it used to be a fraternity house. It was, 2007? I think it became basically a mixed use where CRMC moved into their offices into the first floor, and then the second and third floor just became apartments. And now CRMC is moving to their new office, and it's time to make it in fraternity again. So, is there any questions we can answer?
Commissioner Wolf?
Yeah, I'm still, it's kind of a curious history for this. And so my question is, in 2007, it must have been laid out with many bedrooms, similar to what you're proposing now, right?
Correct.
And so they tore out all of those walls and redid it as the current apartments and the offices on the ground floor.
Yes.
And now you're going to tear out large parts of that and go back to the many individual bedrooms?
True story. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just, as I said, it's sort of interesting history.
Other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of Commissioner Wolf's question, was there any particular reason why in 2007 it stopped being a fraternity and transitioned to a different use, and then now is being transitioned back into a fraternity potentially?
Do you want me to tell a story? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I don't want to put a bad light on a fraternity, but here's the story. They had a social gathering in the house and did some significant structural damage to the house, which actually I got to repair that, and then the fraternity was ejected. We repaired the house, and that CRMC made the decision to do what they did, and now it's, so significant structural damage to the building.
All right. Commissioner Wolf?
I have to ask, did they continue as a licensed fraternity at MSU?
I have no idea.
You don't know if they were...
What happened to them? I don't know.
Any other questions? That is a good story.
No, there's more. But.
No, that's fine. I was told before the meeting that there was an interesting story associated, so I appreciate that, Tom. Any other questions for Mr. Reeder? All right, if you could stick close, we're going to open up the public hearing. And that said, they take this opportunity to open up a public hearing for this particular application. If there's anybody present in our audience or from the public that would like to make a comment on this application, now would be the time to come forward. Okay, I'm seeing nobody. Ms. Dialis, is it just the Rosses that are?
Yes, that is correct, just the Rosses
Okay.
are in attendance.
You might just maybe ask if they've got anything to add. Wouldn't hurt.
Mrs. Ross, you are unmuted and allowed to speak.
No comments for us, thank you.
No, we're very happy with the presentation. It was a good story.
Thank you. All right, then. So then we'll close the public hearing and return this to the commission. Are there any other directives or questions that we'd like to pose to the applicant or to staff? And then with the knowledge that we'll see this again in January. All right. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you at our next meeting. And that will move us on to item 6.2, our second public hearing of the evening. This is an application to establish a fraternity at 532 Ann Street. Ms. Schmidt, before you proceed, I understand that Commissioner Cahill would like to recuse himself.
Yes.
Please.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I'm moving to recuse myself from this matter. My cousin, Paul Schultz, is involved in this matter, and I think it would be appropriate that I not be involved in the consideration.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that as a motion to Commissioner Cahill would like to recuse himself from the discussion and voting on this matter. Is there a second on that motion?
Williams, second.
Thank you. That's been moved by Commissioner Cahill and seconded by Commissioner Williams. Is there any discussion on that motion? All right, seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to allow Commissioner Cahill to recuse himself, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? That motion carries. If you will step away from the table, and we'll see you at the next item of business. Thank you. Ms. Schmidt. Absolutely.
Subject property is .236 acres in size with street frontage on Ann Street. The east and south sides of the house front on a public alley. The property is zoned RM 32 City Center Multiple Family District, which allows fraternities and sororities with a special use permit. The dwelling is 2.5 stories and 2,724 square feet, and it was built in 1926. The surrounding land use are predominantly student-occupied rental properties. There are no proposed renovations to the interior of the house. However, there are some proposed for the exterior, and those are mainly done to bring the property up to code. The house is proposed to be the official chapter house for Kappa Sigma Delta Psi and has occupancy for 15 fraternity members. The chapter currently includes just over 40 members. The members are not living in the house currently, but will be living in the house soon. The property is proposed to have the parking restriped to include at least 9 parking spaces. The minimum required parking for the occupancy and the use is 8 parking spaces. There is also a proposed bike storage rack for 19 bikes on the west side of the building. The code requires bike storage for 8 bikes with the use and the occupancy that there exists. The trash and recycling bins are stored on the west side of the house. The applicant is proposing to put in a screening fence to screen the bins when they are outside. The living room is 230 square feet and is the only area that will allow for events, so they will be limiting to what they can the number of people that they can have at the house. However, they are looking for a site at MSU where they can hold events. Since the gathering space is so small, they anticipate that any parking that would be needed that would be go above and beyond what's provided for the residents could be handled on the street front on Ann Street or in the municipal parking structures. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Ms. Schmidt? Commissioner Williams.
I noticed in Annette Irwin's memorandum that there had been an inspection conducted and that a re-inspection was supposed to be scheduled to deal with some maintenance issues. I
Yes.
wondered if those were major or minor, or if that reinspection has taken place?
It has not taken place yet, but it will take place soon. And
Do you know anything about what the issues were?
I do not, but typically there are re-inspections. It's very, very rare that the first inspection will cover everything, and it could be anything from fire alarm or fire smoke detectors, things like that. But typically they're taken care of by the second inspection. And we can follow up. We'll have that information at the next meeting.
Thanks.
Other questions from Ms. Schmidt? Commissioner Lapine?
I don't know if this is a question as much as a thought out loud, and maybe there's something that you could respond to, Ms. Schmidt. But one of the things that I'm seeing in this proposal as well as the previous, and I would imagine will probably come up in the other two, is the parking spaces that are available in proportion to the number of individuals that would potentially be living in the fraternities. And it makes total sense to me that, with the calculation that the number of parking spaces would be adequate, but especially on Ann Street, I think parking is becoming more and more of a concern in that Bailey area. And I just wonder if the city has taken any thought as to how we might remedy that situation if we have more and more houses coming on board that will have more occupants in them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, recently, obviously, it was a pretty infrequent event, but when we had the U of M game, alerts went out that East Lansing was at capacity for parking. And you couldn't drive down any of those streets in Bailey. So I just worry, as there's probably larger events happening at these fraternity homes, how that will impact the residents that are living around those areas.
Yeah, that's a good question. And this specific home, because they do have 15 members, I doubt that they really would have any capacity on site to have more than the people that are, for meetings for more than the people that live there. As you can tell, we're starting to get more and more meters along Ann Street and some of the surrounding streets too, to help with that a little bit.
Yeah.
The places that we worry, the fraternities that we worry more about are the ones that are typically like closer to owner-occupied properties. And as you said, they spill over in the neighborhoods and people can't get in their drives and things like that. This particular property, staff is not as concerned by. Oftentimes, even if the only, like I said, they're proposing to stripe at least 9, and they showed in a hash that they can actually get 11, and they'll probably do the 11. It's less convenient for the residents, but they do it all over, and it just helps accommodate more parking spaces on site. This is also in close proximity to more than one of our parking structures, and a lot of the fraternities, if they have more people living on site that need parking, they will get passes in the parking structure, especially when they're as close as they are to these structures as this Ann Street property is. Okay. But that's a good question, and that's one of the key things that we really bring the fraternities to for a special use permit, is to weigh those parking issues that could become problematic. And with the special use permit, once the fraternity is on site and there is a problem, we can go back and work with the fraternity on a new parking plan for the site. And basically, even though we're not likely, most fraternities are going to work with us and find an alternative parking option, the special use permit gives us that ability to go forward and have something to hold over them with the parking.
That explanation is really helpful. Thank you.
Other questions from Ms. Schmidt? Commissioner Wolf?
Just one really minor thing. On the first page, under existing conditions, in the third paragraph where it talks about parking, it says it will be striped for 12 parking spaces there.
That's a typo. What it is there's 12 existing there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just saw that tonight before I came here, and I thought, wow, I missed that twice when I read it.
Yeah.
And I just have one comment, and it's probably outside of our typical purview, but I would reiterate the housing administrator's comment about indicating the location of egress windows from the lower level and the second egress from or exit from the third floor. It's there.
Yes.
And they made a point of saying it was specifically in the lower level in one of the bedrooms, but all three of them appear to have, I mean, there's areaways and sort of cages around them.
Yes.
So again, it's probably outside of what we would typically look at, but maybe the building department would
Yes.
appreciate knowing that there's, that it's all
Especially
well and
with,
safe.
yeah, and especially with the bedrooms in the basement.
Yes.
And as you see, they have a fire, or a fire stair
Yeah,
from the third
exactly,
floor.
yeah.
And that's,
Secondary egress, right?
yep.
Yep, thanks.
Okay.
Anything else from Ms. Schmidt? All right, thanks.
Great,
I
thank
see the applicant is here. If you have anything you'd like to add to Ms. Schmidt's presentation, or if you're willing to take questions as well?
Hello, my name is Paul Schultz. I'm the president of the Delta Psi Alumni Housing Corporation. I don't have any further comments, but I'm happy to take any of your questions. We also have 2 members of the chapter, and between us, we could probably answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Schultz? Schultz? Yes.
Yep.
Or for his associates? Commissioner Wolf?
Can you answer the question about the egress from the basement and from the third floor? Exactly what is there?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it myself, like of that specific technical question, but I can get the answer for you. Yeah.
Okay, and so there isn't anyone, the owner of the property or is not here?
We are the owner. I'm just not familiar with the I would have to probably refer to the property management that we have taken care of it. They're more familiar with the property itself.
Commissioner Wolf, it looked to me like there were sort of places from which you could egress the lower level. It's not specifically marked on the plans. And I think that was
Sure.
the housing administrator's concern is that they're there, apparently. Wouldn't be a bad idea to indicate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, there is one from the basement shown on the plan.
Correct.
Yes, and there's a hinged door shown on the third floor
Right.
plan that I suspect goes to a fire escape.
Right, but there's the sort of I call it an areaway, the sort of an area where you might exit an lower level, and there's a balustrade built around that to keep people from falling in.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
There's 3 of those around the sides of the building, and so it looks to me that it's probably in the places that's indicated on the plan where a window might be in the bedroom. Again, it just wouldn't be a bad idea to indicate that.
Yeah, we'll follow up with that.
You had more?
Nope.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, I'm just looking to get a little bit more context. So this particular fraternity has just over 40 members. Did they have an existing house that they're living in? Is membership growing? Is that why? What's the story behind that?
Yes, we had occupied a house on 715 Grove up until 2019, and for the past 2 years, the chapter has been renting houses, first on Oakcrest and then on Michigan Avenue. This was an opportunity for us to actually own our own house, and that would help us grow. So that was the reason for the special use permit.
Commissioner Wolf? Follow up then, is this larger capacity than the places that you just moved out of?
It's slightly larger capacity,
rental?
yes, with 15, yes. So I think the other locations were between 12 and 13.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. If you'd stick close, just in case our callers have any questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Urdialis? Excuse me. Take this opportunity to open up the public hearing. Excuse me. Anybody that's present in our audience this evening would like to come forward and make comment on this application, now would be the time to do so. And then, Ms. Urdialis, if you'd check with our virtual attendees.
Mrs. Ross, you are now unmuted and allowed to speak.
That was an excellent presentation. We enjoyed it.
Thank you. Again, seeing no one coming forward, so we'll close the public hearing on this application and return this to the commission. Any other questions or instructions we might give to staff or to the applicant before, and we'll see this again next month? Thank you. And I'll invite Commissioner Cahill to join us back at the table again. And move on to item 7.1. This is old business, an application to establish a fraternity at 312 North Harrison Road and 710 Oak Street. Mr. Menzer.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So just as a reminder, this request was at our last meeting for a public hearing. This is a request from Alan and Rebecca Ross to establish a fraternity within 2 existing apartment buildings at the northeast corner of Harrison and Oak Street, 312 North Harrison and 710 Oak Street. The public hearing was held at the November 10, 2021 meeting. Since that meeting, there was a letter provided. It was signed by Kayla Haggerty. It's on behalf of Sig Tau WPN Housing, providing some answers to some of the questions that came up at the public hearing. I have bulleted those. I thought I did. But it talks about the members in the fraternity. There are 47 total in the chapter. It identifies locations for event parking, basically in the neighborhood, on street, and then overflow at the adjacent Kellogg Center parking garage. And when and where the chapter events are held, as well as the approximate number of attendees at those meetings. As you may have picked up on, Alan and Rebecca Ross, the applicants, are available via Zoom if you have any additional questions for them. I have provided a draft motion to recommend approval of the special use permit and included a couple of reasons, bullet pointed. There are 4. You may choose to strike or add more as you please, as well as one condition, and this condition came from our departmental review of the special use permit request, and it's simply for the applicant to work with our city fire marshal and building division to identify occupancy limits for any of the gathering spaces in either apartment building, and post placards in each room designating that max number. It's something that's a fairly common practice. It's done in buildings, whether it's apartment complexes or any other place where people gather. So we're just would like to encourage that to happen. And you certainly obviously can add more conditions as you may identify those. I am available to answer any questions, and as I noted, the Rosses are here as well.
So any questions for Mr. Menzer or for the applicant owners? Commissioner Wolf?
Yeah, just a question about that condition you just mentioned. That is new. We generally have not put that as a condition on other projects that I'm aware of. Has it been done even without being imposed as a condition? Is that what you're saying?
Typically, yeah. Typically, it's a standard. It's a standard thing that should happen whenever there are people gathering in any one enclosed space. It's simply added as a condition to ensure that it happens. This is a somewhat different special use permit than, I don't want to say it's unusual in any way. It's certainly not. But I wanted to ensure that it was completed, and sometimes things like that may not happen because there are no building permits or anything associated with this. So they don't have a reason to come back to the building division, so I wanted to ensure that it was attached here so that we all kind of went forward knowing that it was required.
Right, but what I was asking is, has that been done typically in other similar buildings in East Lansing?
Yes,
If we
absolutely.
were to go around, we would see those in gathering places in similar buildings?
Yes, sir. For example, if this was a new construction, that would absolutely be required. The fraternity 128 Collingwood that was here earlier in the spring and summer, that was a requirement. It was not a condition, but it's a requirement of the building division.
Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Menzer or for the applicant? Well, then a motion would be in order. Commissioner Wolf?
I will move that we recommend approval to City Council of the special use permit request from Alan and Rebecca Ross to establish a fraternity in 2 existing apartment buildings, one located at 312 North Harrison Road and one located at 710 Oak Street, for the 4 reasons listed in the staff report and with the one condition listed in the staff report.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Commissioner Hendricks, second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Wolf and seconded by Commissioner Hendricks to recommend approval to the City Council for this special use permit request. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Rosses. And I guess the city council will see you presumably in the new year. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And we agree with the occupancy load per room. As a fire suppression contractor, it's very common in commercial environments I work in to see those placards placed in these rooms.
Terrific. Thank you. Moving on our agenda, we have no new business, and that will move us on to item 9, Commissioner Concerns. I'd like to start, though it's not necessarily a concern, it will become a concern. I would like to thank Commissioner Cahill for his continued service these last, I presume, 6 years on the Planning Commission, or at least roughly that amount.
I think it was 4.
Is that right?
Maybe it was 6, I don't know.
Rotating off of the commission and will not be rejoining us next January. So I indeed thank you for your time and expertise and your input into our deliberations. I'll cut short there and just add that as my concern as a result of that is now we have 2 vacancies on this commission, and that we'll ask our city council representative who's in the audience this evening, please help us find some people to replace these Vice Chair Boyle and Commissioner Cahill. So again, thanks, Jack, for your time.
Thank you.
Any other concerns? Oh, Commissioner Cahill.
Yeah, I just wanted to say what a great honor it was to be able to serve the community for 4 or 6 years or however long I was on this. I'm not sure. But I very much enjoyed it, and I especially enjoyed meeting everyone that was serving on the Planning Commission and some great people on this commission. And Mr. Chairman, you've been great running the meetings. Real gentleman and very fair to everyone. And so I've really enjoyed it. I'm sorry to be leaving, but I'm glad for the people I met through this.
Thank you.
Thomas, we didn't get to know each other much except through Zoom.
No worries.
But anyway,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Any other concerns, or this is sort of commissioner comment time?
Yeah, I'll
Commissioner
just
Wolf.
add, it's especially unfortunate that Vice Chair Boyle and Commissioner Cahill are leaving us at the same time. It represents quite a bit of experience in the city here, and there'll be some big seats to fill.
Absolutely. Any other comments or concerns? All right, then a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Cahill.
Second.
And that's been moved by Commissioner Cahill and seconded by Commissioner Sullivan to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? The motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:43. Thank you all.